But this, we were just discussing this offline. This will likely be on Chris's YouTube as well as my podcast, Strange Flows, and who knows where else it may end up. But it's fundamentally a conversation between friends. My name is Matt Pegas. I'm here with Mr. Omar King. On the screen,
Oh,
it will probably
pleasure
say
to
Mr. Omar
acquaint.
Quintanilla Jr. But he goes
Quintanilla.
by it.
Get it right. You
I can't. I don't speak Spanish.
listen.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
not. That's fine. That's
Yeah,
okay.
we're white idiots. Just give us a break, Omar.
Um,
Omar King. I don't know how to
um,
say that shit.
it.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Yeah.
You just call me Mr. King or
Mr. King.
just
Yeah,
my
like
regular
Martin Luther.
name.
So humble of you, Mr. King.
Anyhow, here with
Oh,
Mr.
pleasure
King
to
as well
acquaint.
as Chris Zeischegg, who many people in the literary ecosystem know, but I'll still give the general spiel. He worked for 8 years in the adult industry as a performer, but is now a fantastic writer of books, including The Magician and Creation. I've read the entirety of Creation, which I enjoyed the hell out of.
Yeah, ain't
Omar
that
actually just
something?
lent me his copy of The Magician. I will be buying
Yeah,
my own of the new revised version, but I have to
I'm
say,
still on 62,
yeah, you're on
page
page 67,
62.
right?
No,
Um,
62.
62.
All right.
I myself am inhaling it. I only got it last night,
Oh,
but
thank you.
pretty immediately taken in, as I was with Creation as well. I don't know. This could be an interesting place to start. I guess it's not really an interview. Again, I view this as more as a conversation, but interesting
Yes, right.
enough place to start the conversation. I guess it speaks to my own, I don't know what the word is, proclivities, tastes, um, fucked upness, but there's something about
Uh,
the kind of content, the sexuality of it and the grittiness of it that just, yeah, for better or worse, immediately draws me in. And I know Dennis Cooper is a huge influence on you, as he is
oh,
on me as well. And
Yeah.
that influence very much comes through. I don't know if I phrase this as a question, but and I know you've talked about this elsewhere, but basically Cooper and similar writers were a pretty big influence, as I gather. And you seem to find yourself kind of drawn back to this sort of, well, one, the transgressive subject matter, but even more specifically the kind of narrator who, for lack of a better term, is kind of the male slut who ends up in trouble. Is that a not too
always
forward
Yeah.
a
in
way of putting it? Yep.
mischief, like a little mouse.
Like a little mouse.
Like
Yeah.
Tom and Jerry.
Right. Well,
It is a little Tom and Jerry. It's
uh
true. Yeah.
I got into Brett Ellis in high school, and then Dennis
Yes.
Cooper in my early 20s, and they were both like massive literary influences on me. And then probably like later Joan Didion, just because of similar stylistic stuff, but maybe not content wise.
Hmm.
And then yeah, I was like working my way through college, doing porn at that point in
Oh
my life.
yeah.
And I think by the end of my 20s, sorry, I don't know if you could hear this. There's like a helicopter circling. But
You're
by the end of
good. Zoom's good at filtering that stuff out.
okay. Well, by the end of my 20s, into my early 30s, my sex work life got real sketchy, and I just felt like I had sort of become like a
Hmm.
mild character in some of these books. Like it was
Yeah.
just, you know, a lot of sort of ambiance of violence and
Right.
sexuality in such a negative context that I don't know, this got very real at some point, especially when I
Yeah.
was writing The Magician initially, and then life took a turn to where I'm
Hmm.
now, which is like much more stable. But I think
Good.
over the course of time I was able to like write some of these books that for better or worse are now out there. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Creation
No, that
yeah, anyway.
makes a lot of sense. It's kind of interesting. I only know so much about your personal life, but I understand a lot of what you write is quasi in the auto fictional space, although I'm sure it lapses into more purely fictional territory. But it's
Or,
interesting. So I'm also very influenced by, as I said, the Dennis, let's just call it the Dennis Cooper thing of like that kind
yeah.
of, boy who wants to be destroyed for sexual reasons or maybe for pure catharsis. It looms over much of what I myself have written. I can't say I've ever particularly lived it. It is just it seems to me from what I know about your life that you kind of hit a point where you kind of could delve into this frightening thing in Dennis Cooper's books, but it was also sort of autofictional or even autobiographical. And that maybe something because you haven't. I don't know if you mentioned getting into Brett Ellis in high school. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you were writing that whole time, or maybe it's kind of my read on your career, and maybe it's wrong, but is that something kind of clicked into place at a certain point? And it's like, oh, I can inhabit this sort of Dennis Cooper world or something. Is that does that seem accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I was attempting to write prose and even a novel in high school. I don't want to go too much into that because it's boring. Like I wasn't good at it, like any most young people aren't good at writing, right?
Right.
So,
Takes work.
but I think it sets the tone. Like whatever you're after, I think it takes a while to get good at it. So yeah, I was interested. And all of that, like Bret Easton Ellis stuff, was very abstract to me at that time. I think the first things I was writing as just a person were not as or as much of a bummer, I guess, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Like they were maybe more sweet and sincere and about just being a young person and maybe first getting into porn, but a lot of the writing around that time was about just like the novelty of my experiences or being in love or like things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff that people have gotten into of mine comes from like a very specific time in my life where I kind of quit the adult industry overnight, was like a hustler, was working in the adult industry sort of behind the scenes, and I had been in this like very volatile relationship
Oh
with
yes,
an addict, and
yes.
a lot of that was just like such kind of emotional chaos around that time. And
Hmm.
because I had this language developed around learning, like transgressive literature, hardcore and metal music, my
Yeah.
love
Oh
for like
yes.
horror films and things like that. Like the language to express myself was mostly wrapped up in violence. And then there was also kind of a lot of that just circling my life. So I think it became just my only way of really grappling with that in a way that I had control over, which was just writing books. So um, creation is like spans a lot of different things. I think
Yeah.
it's a lot about that time of my life involved in sex work. But I happened to meet this wonderful person named Luca Fisher, who is still a
Right.
friend of mine, and she is.
How is she?
How is she? She's
Yes.
great.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
well, yeah, I talk about this in like almost all the
Uh,
current late interviews, but she's this great friend of mine who's an artist, and she helped sort of streamline some of what I was doing at the time. She was putting
Yeah.
out a lot of zines and producing underground film and was
No,
involved in like performance art. So I think she wanted to like help push this into like
a
territory
meta
blending the
space.
lines of theatricality and violence. Anyway, go for it. You go
No, no,
ahead.
totally. No, that it really comes across. I met. I don't think I was really properly introduced to Luca, unfortunately. But I did meet her at the reading you did. Sorry, what's his name? Mr. Rice, David Rice, David
Oh,
Leo
David
Rice.
Liam Rice. Yeah.
Yeah, the reading that
yeah.
Omar and I went to fortuitously ran
It
into
was
Dennis Cooper there as
amazing.
well. It was fantastic, and I quasi met Luca. Would love to
Yes.
talk to her more at a certain point. She does seem, yeah, as you described it, pushing the work beyond just the text, but into this kind of performative space. I think it's really, really cool, and it lends itself especially well to the kind of blurring the lines between auto fiction and fiction that you engage in. And I've seen, your sort of photographic book as well from the Magician era is very
Uh-huh.
neat, and I understand Luca looms large over that. So no, her influence is very much felt, and I think it's a obviously a fantastic collaboration. And as someone, and Omar can probably say the same with the writerly ambitions and a writerly practice of my own, it's really neat to see the different kind of creative outlets that come together. But I was gonna say, I read Creation before The Magician. I'm still not through The Magician as of yet, as I said at the top of the call. And I don't know, in many ways that may be kind of an ass backward way of approaching your work because Creation is ostensibly kind of an addendum on The Magician, or maybe I'm wrong and you can correct me, but suffice to say, I really, really like Creation as a distillate. There's definitely pure fiction in there, but also some ostensible, purely nonfiction, and basically, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole thing is kind of an unpacking of your creative philosophy, dare I say, or process, and was very inspirational on those grounds. I actually, not to talk about myself too much because I sincerely don't, but only by way of, I guess, relating to the work. So I have my own. I have two books out. One's called Dragon Day,
Yeah,
which is a
the
novel,
Black Album.
and the other is which Omar's read. Or
Yeah,
actually, Omar's read both of them, but one's called The
yes.
Black Album, which is kind of, I
Golly.
guess, would be my own equivalent of Creation because in it there's
Oh,
several essays about the process of writing the first novel and
Okay.
which then loom into kind of fictional territory. Don't want to talk about myself too much other than to say
oh,
it
can
was
hardly speak.
strikingly familiar
That's right.
territory for me. Yeah, he's showing the book.
Yes.
And
But,
I think I almost wish more writers would kind of write books like Creation that kind of show their cards a little bit in terms of the creative process because I feel like we live in such a such an era where there's so many books out that it's almost like not to put too much of a pun on this, but
oh,
it's an era in which magicians can show their tricks, perhaps. That'd be 240. That's none of that is really a question, but I don't know. Does that resonate with the general what Creation is, whether or not it's a terrible idea to use for the magician? Because I found it to be a really cool intro.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I apologies. I'm not familiar with your work.
No, it's
We've met
okay.
a couple of
Yeah,
times, and I know
I'll
that you're
end you with.
publishing Omar's new collection, which we'll get to in a
we'll
minute.
get
But
to it in a moment.
Oh,
Yep.
talk about new collection. I'm working on the second one. I have to tell you, you're well, you're in the second book.
I'm in the second book. All right,
Yes.
well, hit pause. Let's
Wait,
structure this conversation a little bit.
are
I
you
want to
Yeah,
know
yeah.
welcome?
how we
We'll dive
met and
in.
all
We
that
will.
in 1 minute, but
Yep.
let me
Yes.
answer this question or I'm going to forget
Okay.
what the fuck
Sorry.
we're
Yes.
talking about here.
All right then.
Um, Yeah, I mean, so creation was, I've said this before in other interviews too, but it was initially like a shithead version of me being like, all right, I have all these stories. I'm very slow at writing novels. I want to like put something out so that I don't fall off the map.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's makes sense. Yeah.
And then because it's hard for me to phone this shit in, and I need like a structure to my books. I was talking to my friend Luca about a lot of the pieces I was putting in this book, and a lot of them have to do with both sex work and my interest in art, which has a lot to do with this kind of philosophy of violence. But so many of these pieces were not about Luca, but she had like facilitated their initial publication in many
Right.
ways. They were on like very underground things. So
Yeah.
I remembered this essay I'd written about her and our friendship that was from almost like 10 years ago. And I had tried to get it published in this magazine, and the magazine kind of folded like so many of these do. It's so like I don't think very many people read it, but I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was very personal to me, and it was kind of meaningful to the two of
Hmm.
us because I don't know, we had developed this kind of interesting art practice together. And then, we then went on with our lives and kind of drifted apart in terms of our collaborations, but she is still involved in doing all this stuff, and I'm involved in doing all this stuff, and we still hang out, but
Right.
less together. So, or we less together in an artistic context. So, I wanted to end the book. I wanted to just like put her in there, put all these fucked up stories I was writing, but then end it with this like very sincere conversation between the two of us where we talk about like how our lives have evolved. And, she had come out as trans during
Right.
this process. So there's this whole thing about that. But also, we're, I think, both at points in our lives where we have a little bit more aspirations for like I don't know, slowing down, self-care,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever that means to us while keeping these artistic practices together. So I thought it was just like a nice balance to weave her through this because I think she's such a important part of my life. But my writing still is very much focused on this kind of brutality around
Yeah.
sex and so forth. So I don't know. It just seemed like an interesting balance, but it gave a real structure to this book.
No,
Do
it's
we
a
want to jump
beautiful work. Yeah.
into talking about Omar? Because I know you're just sitting here waiting at the fucking go, but I don't know how many people.
Absolutely no. Sorry, I didn't want to,
Um,
as you said, we got to structure it some way, but I definitely wanted to get some chit chat in there on creation before diving in. But
oh, I
Omar,
just
sorry
love it
for
so much. Just love it. I have to say, I if I ever I could totally see this. I know it just sounds. Everybody says, "Oh, I could totally see this as a TV show or a movie," but I totally can see this book collection of stories and other unbecoming raunchy stuff as one of them HBO shows. What? Oh man, that would be great. I'd love to play one of them background characters or make a guest appearance in that in that movie.
let's make it
Can
happen.
I preface this part of the
Yeah.
conversation and just talk about how the fuck I found out about you, Omar? Because
Oh,
you're a
sure.
very
I
interesting.
remember that's because you were it was before March 8th, Friday, 2024, and that was a couple of days before you had the launch party. And I remember, like the yellow pages on the Instagram website, I just saw that you gonna have a launch party that Friday. I reckon. And I remember I told Matt, the other Matt, not this Matt, Matt Graham, if you reckon Matt Graham, son of Dennis Cooper, who is, I guess, I have not heard from him in a hot minute, and I don't know what happened to him, but he would be like in a way, my mentor. He is my friend
Hmm.
and still is. I just haven't heard from him. But he and I we would talk about these books and writers and all these movies, and we would just it was a interesting friendship, even though it was digital. But anyhow, I because it's a long story and it was a very funny and dark and just and, and weird story too because I had no idea. I'll be frank with you, I had no idea who you were, to be frank. You to me, I thought you were because well, I thought you were one of them indie writers. Like
Well, I
when
am one of those
because he
indie
told yes,
writers.
he told me the name Danny Wilde, so I thought it was some kind of
Oh
I just
yeah.
thought it was one of them pen names or something. But I come to realize afterwards when my associate told me because I told him I'm going to a launch party because I was so happy and giddy and just so I was just so excited because I haven't been out and about in a hot minute. And I don't often go to these things. So anyway, I told him, who's it for? And I said, Danny, Danny Wild, because I couldn't pronounce your name. I'll be frank. So you cannot pronounce my name? I couldn't pronounce your name.
That's
Who,
fair.
like
Yeah,
Chris
I got a
Z, I just,
fucked up
who
German
the,
name and you got a
yeah,
fucked up Spanish name, so
yes.
we won't
Anyhow,
attempt it.
see, so I just, Danny Wild was so easy for me to say. So I told him Danny Wild. And he had a face that he knew something that I didn't know, that he knew that I didn't know, that he knew exactly what I was talking about, but I had no idea what he was getting at. So he had this like Cheshire grin, and he asked me, and he said, uh, "Do you know who this Danny Wow is?" No, I don't reckon. I'm sorry. Well, you get away. You're gonna know him already. And so what happened? He pulled. Well, I'm not gonna mention names. It's just associate. So the associate pulled out the cell phone and put on the internet, put the porno hub, the porno hub, typed your name in,
Huh?
and he played a footage of it, a video of, I guess he was having intercourse with some gal on a mattress. And so if this all happened while I was eating a sandwich, and it for me, I just saw red. I saw red and I just pushed that cell phone away. I told him, "What the heck is wrong with you? I'm eating a sandwich. I don't want to be seeing that while he's eating somebody out. You know, this is just listen. I don't know because I don't know this person. I don't know him that way, and I'm already knowing him like that. That's just inappropriate for me. So
I'm
fast
gonna
forward to
No, what's that?
hold on a second,
oh,
Omar,
okay,
because you play this fucking game, and I don't really understand. Because
what?
I'm reading your book. All right, hold on.
Okay,
We
go
gotta
ahead.
reestablish you are a writer. No one knows this from what you're talking about. But I need to
Okay,
make
go
this
ahead.
very clear
Yes,
because I kept seeing you on my Instagram account. All right, I don't know
yes,
who you are.
Yeah.
This AHS in the Black Lodge.
yes.
Your
That's me.
account is not very clear on what it is you
It's my
do, except you have.
scrapbook.
All right, hold on. Just be quiet for
You're
one.
welcome. Oh, sorry.
No, no worries. I'm trying to tell people
Yeah.
how fucking
Okay.
amazing you
Oh,
are because I
oh,
think it's
sorry.
really important. Okay. But you are sort of you have this like very interesting outsider art kind of approach
Oh,
to visual art, right? You have been drawing in like MS Paint or something, these kind of
oh
insane
yeah.
portraits of people.
Yeah. The Microsoft Word. It's so fun to use.
Uh-huh.
I used to do it on the iPad, but the stupid iPad broke down on me. So I started working the art pieces on the computer. But then the computer doesn't work so much because I have to wait 2 hours to log in because you know, it doesn't turn off completely. So I would just plug it off. So I I use my Android tablet, which has the Microsoft application, which I use, and I play around with it. It's so fun. Not just that, I like doing the art pieces on the cereal boxes and
Oh yeah.
the cardboard, and also with the construction paper, whatever I have, whatever's in my circle or whatever, whatever access to me.
Do you use
I realized the
yeah.
canvas and Joanna's are expensive, so I thought that just blows. So I might as well be creative with it and just go on. You know, I don't like to. I'm not the type to be struggling that way. I do what I need to do and I get it done.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's admirable. So
Thank you.
So basically, you had hit me up at some point, and
Yes,
I,
I asked
over
you
the
about.
past 6 months, have realized you have infiltrated the DMs of most people in
Yes.
alternative literature these
Yeah, I
days
like to talk to
on
people.
Instagram. All
Yeah.
right. So a lot of people have DM'd me asking, who is this Omar guy? And
Oh,
initially, I'm like, I don't fucking know because, like,
excuse me.
let's just clear. I think it's important also just to be upfront. Like you have autism, you don't hide
Yes,
that. It's very clear. But I think this is actually kind of an interesting strength of yours because
yes.
you don't have this block that most people do about reaching out and just asking for what you want, which I think is very cool. And
Mhm.
initially you told me you're writing books, right? And I'm
Yeah,
like, I don't know who the fuck you are.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
this is my initial reaction because like
Oh,
fair, there are a million writers out there and like
yeah.
whatever, but you got me this collection that's
Oh,
coming what in
thank
January?
Betsy.
Yeah,
Uh,
January.
well, there's so many dates because I want to. This is just.
Yeah.
My idea is what I'd like to release it on a Tuesday or a Thursday. I don't know
Okay.
because if you read Lester, it's if you read the part where Lester goes to the Hilton on a Tuesday, so it's just a funny way of saying, Lester went to the Hilton on a Tuesday, which man, he had quite a pit there at group therapy.
Yeah. Who is
But
okay. So,
yes, to give this spiel part or the plug, this book, An Odyssey of Dingbats, will be coming out in
all right.
January. Maybe it's a meeting of the minds here. Three very different people, and we maybe could have I could have done a better job formulating this conversation at the outset. But
Okay,
the reason I'm here is because I am helping Omar publish
All
this
right.
book, and
yeah,
Right. And I
yes,
have
um,
to say, everyone I've spoken to who is trying to read this or reading it right now kind of loves the fuck out of you, Omar, and I'm getting on board. And I want to, first of all, So I
Go
was
ahead.
very skeptical going into this, but like within the second story, there like let me just explain
The
to
orange
some people out
crayon.
in the world what is going on here, because I think this is
Yeah.
actually fucking brilliant. Like you have a story from the perspective of an orange crayon lying on the floor.
Yes.
And I know you just talked about all of your whatevers about like your feelings about watching porn, but you're
Oh,
also
yes.
writing
Like
explicitly
a
about
voyeur.
BDSM,
Mhm.
explicit sex,
Yes.
but in these extremely bizarre contexts, which I think are like fucking hilarious. Like it's this orange crayon on the floor, like watching some fat fucker get
Yeah.
a
This pudgy.
dominatrix. Yeah.
Indeed, this pudgy Baldwin feller, He's just having lustrous relations with this woman in a pink, bubble pink dress, and
Uh-huh.
the whole thing. It just, I don't know, that idea just clicked on me, just like that, just that voyeuristic crayon, just watching, can't do anything, can't move around, can think and just probably speak in his mind, but just see. And that's just scary to be in that position. Just you're only existing rather than living.
Right, and you
And
draw the
so
parallel between that and
he's a
being
slave.
submissive. Yeah. Which is brilliant.
He sure is.
So what is your, because I remember like posting something on my Instagram stories about like this is like the best story ever written about BDSM. And I have my own hangups because I think like BDSM front like public facing culture is like one of the most embarrassing
Right.
fucking things
Yeah.
in the world. But
Quite a
Omar,
bit.
you wrote me back being like, what is BDSM? So
Yeah,
I
what is
also
BDSM?
so how do you even get to these points in your stories?
I have no idea what that terminology. I thought it was just some person. They're just having the sex and sexual relation where they do. I call it, the monkey in the bush or the Georgie Porgy and stuff like that.
How
But
old
I
are
did.
you?
I'm 24 years of age. I was born September 24, 2000 at Queen of Angels Hospital. It was on Hollywood and Sunset, but the hospital changed uh, to Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. That was 24 years ago. Then I moved to Gardena about, I believe, 2004. So that was 20 years now, and I never left Gardena. And there's quite that just everything has formulated here in Gardena, formulated my personality, my character, and my, in a way, my quote unquote, my bizarre personality and happy disposition.
I love it.
Thank you.
But how do you so okay, I have a few questions here.
Okay,
I've
go
talked to you
ahead.
a little bit about this before, but in the context
Right.
of just that story, like, there's a lot going on in this book, but when you say something like, I don't know what BDSM is, and
No,
yet
I
you're
don't know.
explicitly writing about it, where do you even, I mean, that's
Where do
fine.
I get? Yeah.
Where do you
I
get
just,
these, where do you find that material to sort of mine in your
well,
life?
like watching television or the movies.
Okay.
So when you're watching television and movies, you just watch it and you just for entertainment and whatnot. And I had no idea what all these terminology are. I just watched a movie that had that word you call it, BDSM,
Yeah.
but I just like to call it just intercourse because it's just kind of like almost like a rough intercourse. People having sexual relation roughly. That's what I like to see it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyhow, so I watched this. Excuse me. I watched this movie where this lady, she was like this, and I reckon I guess she's some kind of secretary or whatnot, and she's just walking about like that, like it's normal and whatnot, and it's just that intrigued me like that. Just it sparked in a way, but I had no idea what she was doing or what the terminology was. In a way, she was a slave, and she is a slave.
Yeah.
So,
So,
and then Kafka, I read Kafka, the Metamorphosis. So that was also my influence too with Kafka and Hubert Selby Jr. I love Cubby.
okay. again, I'm just going to step back. I think a lot of people, when they think about someone like yourself with
Yes.
autism or some other kind of neurodivergence, there
Excuse
is
me. Yes.
in the general culture, there is an instinct, I think, to sort of think about you as not having access to some of these things, and I think it sort of infantilizes you, and that's
Yeah.
obviously not true. You're one of the most well-read people I've met, and
Thank you.
so, but I'm also very curious because in the general population,
Rach.
most people don't know about these literary scenes. I mean, Hubert Selby Jr. is like a big deal, and I don't know what the
I
movie
love
you're talking
I
about,
love
but
his
how do
book, but
you find something like Apocalypse Party, Amphetamine Sulfate, Dennis Cooper? I mean, in the general population, most people don't know what the fuck this stuff is, and yet you are
yeah,
becoming friends with all these people, which is kind of insane and wonderful.
thank you. Well, first, line the YouTube videos. I go on YouTube and I watch these people do reviews on these certain books. This one feller individual's name is Plagued by Visions. I reckon him.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
yeah, I've
remember
heard of him. Juan,
yeah,
right?
Juan,
Yeah.
yes, Juani. So anyway, he did a review of, I believe, Dennis Cooper's The Sluts. And then there was another book he did a review at. I'm trying to recall. It was this other book. It was a very splat horror or extreme horror. It was some this fat feller who, well, he's invalid, and this lady, a caretaker, takes care. And I guess there's some body horror in that, and so that intrigued me too. And so anyhow, I just went on the about page and just look him up on the Instagram and just see what he's all about and followed. So then another person, I forgot his name, he followed Son of Dennis Cooper, and so I looked at his stuff too, and I just went through and just, in a way, I was a detective or a sleuth around. I just looked through, and that all stuff just intrigued me. It's just, I'm used to books like The Wizard of Oz or A Confederacy of Dunces. I finished that book in 2020, and
Yeah.
it was quite an interesting book. Or I'm or there's another book, Stephen King, Misery, or Pet Cemetery, which I'm currently reading Pet Cemetery again, which it's very interesting novel. I like the way it's formulated. It may look commercial, but there's some truth to it in what he writes, and there's something about it just clicks in me. I don't know. Then I reckon I read B.C. Andrews, Flowers in the Attic. That also intrigued me. And if you know about James Baldwin,
I know who James
Jimmy
Baldwin
Baldwin.
is. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I read Jimmy Baldwin, If Bill Street Could Talk in the library. I reckon because there's a scene in page 14 to 17 where there's this scene of this lady and this man having sexual relations, but it's not, they don't, it doesn't say the lady is sitting on his red Peter or his pecker or this, that, or the other. But the way it's just flowered up, it was just so bizarre and funny to me. And then
Yeah.
he slaps her around and just that kind of rhyme that just it just intrigued me. It and even shocked me too. So it planted a seed in my head, and so forth and so on. I started reading more books, the Gone Girl book. Then I read 1984. That was a very good book. I love that one. And then afterwards, I started going with the indie ones. I believe the one indie book I've recently read is Waiting Room by Jake Fratzik, and then another one by my good friend uh, Charlene Elspie. If anybody's y'all aware of Charlene Elspie
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah. She's
Char,
also published with Apocalypse.
yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
So she sent me an advanced copy of Violent Faculties. Wow, that was amazing. Just the way it's just written, it's just an essay and just philosophical with a little just hints of horror and extreme torture there. And it just, my imagination just expanded there that you can write such things like that. And then this also it piqued my interest, if you can see it.
Yeah.
It piqued my interest,
This
and
is
that's why I'm a curious reader and just a curious person. Just
Yeah.
I'd like to
you're
get to
disappearing
know
here in the
oh,
image.
sorry. I'd
That's
like
not
to get to know the person who's writing it and what they're, I guess, get into the psyche of it all, into their heads. Or why they like, why, how did you formulate this book? Or how did, I mean, not the technicalities, but just the whole, I guess, the creativity of it all and the imagination. And well, and um, sorry, I'm just losing. My brain is scattered as we
No,
speak.
no,
I'm just so, but you get what I mean.
I do get what you mean. I think that's actually amazing. And one of the things I think is, besides just your interest in this material and your sort of digital
I
sleuthing, as
mean,
you've called it,
I
to
may be
find all these
discriminate. I
people.
would be sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I would, say I would be have a bias or something, or say this is a piece of shit. No, I can't do that. I have to be fair and I have to be respectful, and read the entire book as is. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I read it as is and the entirety of it all, because golly, what a journey it was for me. What a journey.
Well, I'm glad you think that. So I'm gonna talk about one other thing about you
Okay, go
that I think
ahead.
is very cool. Okay, so you live in Gardenia, California, right?
Gardena.
Yeah,
There's no
Gardenia. All
I
right.
in this, just D.
I've gotten the spiel from Omar before. Yeah.
You fucking correct me over. All right, fair enough. Well, uh, which I've never been there, but it's close enough to Los Angeles. And
Yes.
you are constantly going to readings, which I have
Yeah.
opinions on. I go to them, but I think by and large they're dog shit. Like they're a way to meet people, but like
Yeah. That's basically the excuse, just to get out and see
yeah.
people.
But like the fact that you are taking like a bus to get to all
Yeah.
this shit. Like, you know what? Last night we both ended up at Soho House in
Yes.
downtown Los Angeles, which I don't have a membership to, but they have I guess, a reading series there.
Yeah.
And a very prominent author invited me, and then I get a text from you a couple days ago being like, Chris, are you going to be at Soho House on
Yeah.
Tuesday night? I'm going to show up. And you're like, you want to get there early? We could get food. And I was like,
Yeah. And then
Omar, that's
you said it was a
expensive,
piece of
shitty
shit.
ass food. But I just mean like, you're there. You're like at
Yeah.
all this shit and way more than like most people who are, I don't know,
You don't
late.
need to take the bus. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and
Yeah.
I find that really impressive that
Me too.
you're just showing up to and like
Yeah.
involved in this stuff in a way like very few people are, which is very cool. I don't know.
Thank
So
you.
you're just how do you find out about all this shit? Like you know about these things more than I do. If Melissa
Well,
hadn't invited me last night, I wouldn't be
right.
there.
Right. Well, I just do my sleuthing. I just pay
All right.
attention, read what's going on. I see it on my feed. Oh, I'm having this. One is having in New York City, the other one in the UK. Wait, I wish I could go to New York City or the UK, but
Sure.
these things you got to plan it.
Right.
And so I see it. It's like I take it as the yellow pages. You see something on a bulletin board, or you see something on a like, like a telephone post or something, and you see it, and you go on, and you just have to plan these things. I think that's what it is. Some people just don't. They just wing it, and I get it. They're just. I'm a lazy Leo, so I get it. But I have to take it upon me to plan. The This is what time I'm going to go, what bus I'm taking, and golly, I take like about 2 or 3 buses. I remember when I went to Storybooks Cafe, I took the number 910, 950 bus. They're both conjoined together, the 950. And
Yeah.
then I went to, I believe, First and Hill Street, and I took the number the number 4 bus, and then it dropped me off at a street where there's a cafe and a restaurant joint. So unfamiliar to me. I'm not so familiar with the area, Echo Park and whatnot. But I just also got to ask as well. You have to ask and say, "What street is this?" Or "Can you help me direct me where this Storybooks Cafe joint is located, or this, that, or the other. I know it. Some people might find intimidating to ask or approach people, but you have to speak up and you have to speak. You have to speak what you're thinking and what your heart is telling you.
And
It's a,
advocate for
it's an
yourself.
advocate. That's important, and
Yeah.
I do that. And if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't be going anywhere else.
I
That
love
is
that.
important.
So how did you two meet up? Like, how did this book come to
Oh,
fruition?
Yeah, good
thanks to
question.
Evan.
Yeah, another person altogether, Evan Papadakis, who's my normal co-host for Strange Flows and just a long-term associate of mine. I mean, listen, I could give the short version is, kind of similar to how you met Omar. We just came across each other's radars, and I could tell, and I write this in the intro to Dingbats, which I think made it into the copy that you have, Chris, and anyone who ends up buying the book, and I'll post it online at some point. My general impressions on meeting Omar. I'm not
I
trying to
don't have
promote.
it, I don't think.
Oh,
Oh,
Jesus,
Oh,
really? That's a shame. I'll send you the essay because
that's
I'm
fine.
proud of the essay and I'm proud of,
yeah, I'd love to read
my
it.
general take on
Well,
Omar. And I'm
basically,
proud to have been someone who, you know,
well, to be
hopefully an
frank,
early
is
adopter. I think Omar will have many readers in the future, but
I agree.
and both
I
of us
mean,
would be early adopters.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, just within moments. So, all right, full, yeah, short version of the story just came across each other's radar. Long version of the story. I was supposed to do a car crash collective reading. I was supposed to read out it with Alex Kazemi and a few others. I couldn't make it, which I agonized over because I thought this was going to be like a really good opportunity for me, but circumstances were what they were. And so I had Evan read in my stead. And then one of the main takeaways Evan had was like, "Oh yeah, it was a good night. He read a piece of mine, which was cool." And then he was like, "And I met this guy Omar, who I think is going to be famous one day, and like who's an artist." And I was like, "What?" And I wouldn't say that I was skeptical. I was just was like, "All right, yeah, it sounds like you met a really interesting guy." And then we arranged because I do this podcast, Strange Flows, which this will be posted on in one part as well as your YouTube. And I'm willing to like talk to anybody. And I was like, and Evan was like, let's interview Omar. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. And then
yeah,
Omar, you read, so yeah, as you said, Chris, not only does Omar attend all these literary events, he's also occasionally gotten and hopefully more so in the future, the chance to participate. He did an open mic at this. Again, you want to talk
yeah,
about like how did he even hear about this? Like, there's this, and still most people like within the immediate indie lit scene, I don't think are aware of this place, but it's really cool. It's a place called the Noisy
yes,
Nest in Beverly Hills, which is like a
yep,
little more
noisy nest.
theater oriented, a nonprofit.
Oh, yeah,
Convenient for me because like usually I'm used to having to schlep all the way to the east side for all this. This was actually like near where I work in Beverly Hills.
Oh, you're on the west side?
I work on the west side. I'm in the valley, so
Oh,
I,
got it.
as
Okay.
many LA people, I go everywhere. But anyway, Omar's reading at this open mic night event, and that's pretty much how we came across each other's radar. We recorded a podcast that night. Again, as I write in this intro, I could tell within moments that like Omar was legit, like
yeah,
he was the real deal. He was someone with a really unique perspective, a different voice, the whole nine yards of like looking for
yep.
talent in the realm of writing. And then of course he read his story, Lester, that night, as
Last,
well as Pizza and Sex in Costco's parking lot.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I just was like, I don't know. It's one of those things. Like you meet someone, and I don't know how it was like when you met. Well, actually, you described meeting Luca, but maybe it's that kind of relationship, right? Like where you meet someone, and
yeah,
it's like it's not like, oh, let's work on this one project. It's like let's collaborate, and this
Right.
was in August, but I feel like I've known
yeah,
Omar for much longer, and yeah, he told me he was shopping around a manuscript, the manuscript for
yeah,
an Odyssey of Dingbats.
yeah.
And
I
I
want
thought
some
it was
stuff
so
like,
good and interesting. It's like I'm not big enough to public. Like I thought, and I still think that it's worthy of a bigger audience.
yeah,
But also, you do what you can. And in my case,
Right.
I have Strange Flows. I'm also involved with a podcast called New Right, WRITE. I've kind of been around the so-called literary scene for years, and I've had associates encourage me like, oh, you should start your own publishing imprint. And for a really long time, I was like, no, there's already too many of them. I don't want to compete, whatever. And then meeting Omar for me, not to get too wholesome, but it really clicked into place. Like maybe starting a publishing, company or a little publishing imprint, maybe it's not about trying to like make money or compete to be the cool indie press. Maybe it's about
oh,
helping people who actually like could use some help getting their work out there. And again, meeting Omar, that all clicked into place. I was like, let's do it. And New Ritual Press, it's gonna be called. We just
So
had a
what is the
meeting.
name of it? That was my question. Your
Yeah,
press?
sorry. New Ritual Press.
Got it. It's
Um,
not on this copy that I
it's
have.
not. Yeah, you got an even earlier edition.
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of a scrappy outfit here. We're pulling it together.
And we're doing our best. We're doing our best, and
We're
that's
doing our best.
okay.
We just had an interview. We just had a consultation session on setting up like the website and everything today. So it's
Yeah.
coming together fast. Omar's book will be our first, um, targeting January 2025
Got it.
for hard launch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to say like another interesting, like I mentioned kind of the visual art, Omar, that you do, and part of this book that I think is actually makes it even more interesting is a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff is interspersed between your prose. Like I don't know if God, I have my blur on. Some people are going to
Oh,
see
I
this,
can
but
I'll take my blur off and show.
actually,
okay.
I have a copy with me. I'll show it to you. Oh no.
Yeah, but
We're gonna
yours,
have the
you
same
also
issue.
have
Yeah.
the blur.
Oh, I'll take
Yeah.
mine off and
All right.
Oh,
you
All
keep
right,
hold
Matt,
talking.
on.
you do it.
I'll do some pictures. Yeah. I'm gonna
All right.
move my blur. Turn on the light here.
Okay. Well, that's the chimp. What
Right.
you're just showing me is the chimp story, or the group
Oh, is
therapy
it?
slash chimp story. I originally I submitted that to a small. Well, I haven't heard from her in a hot minute, but Cream Scene Carnival. So it was a. I did the chimp story, then I did group therapy conjoined together. And well, when I read it, she chopped the last part of the book because it just for me it just made sense. I it just when the if you read the what's his name? I'm trying to recall his name. Well, the old man, he goes to group therapy because of his dead chimp. And well, it's quite interesting where the characters are in group therapy, they just chime in and they talk, and that's what intrigued me too. And it just when I saw that, it just kind of it it confused me. I was perplexed. I was perplexed because I liked that. And I guess she did not see maybe she didn't see my whatchamacallit creative
We're going
vision.
for. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I'm going for, that one and
All right.
another one. But she did not see it. And well, so I kept it in the Google Docs. I figured I might as well keep it in the Google Docs and revise and refine it. So and then that more of it escalated some more with different stories, putting it all together like a scrapbook in a way,
Hold
and
on,
call it.
Matt.
Yeah.
When you show this, you got to speak, I think, for it to show up
Oh, no
on
kidding.
Oh,
Yeah.
main screen when we record
Yeah.
this. Yeah. All
That-
right. You
okay,
say just keep talking
all right then.
while you show those
Well,
photos.
I'm gonna show. This is just
that
Chester.
was I used
Yeah.
the I used on the iPad. I did the work, and the one over there with Chester that was on the construction paper with the Crayola marker and the Sharpie. Now that was fun to do. I reckon if I'm not mistaken, I did that one at 2021, or is it 2022? It
Says
doesn't have
21.
the date, but
It's in my
I have
video,
a
so maybe.
couple over there. Anyway, so I did that. I just thought, why not have these kind of weird illustrations into the book to give it life to the stories I have, and it's become quite a life of its own, and I'm glad it became a life of its own.
Yeah.
I could just talk about it for days, but I have to, shut up and let the book speak for itself.
Can I ask what your does your family know what you do in a literary context or in a
Um,
artistic context? Because
oh,
this
some of my associates at work, they know my sister, my my sister, my kid sister. She's my Irish twin. We was born 2 days apart. 1 year she was born the 22nd of September. I was born September 24, which is kind of
does
weird because she's
Irish twin mean?
Irish twin means you're both born 1 year apart and probably the same week or same day, like or
Okay.
different days. So she's my Irish twin. Um. Anyway, she knows about it. I tell her about these things, and I'd like to take her with me and just to get her out in the house because as well too, she's got the she's too got the autism. But anyway, um,
And what is her reaction to this stuff?
she talks about God. She, it's so funny. Her and I, we recite the pages of all these different books. Like one, we recited the creation book, and she did her it's so funny. Her and I, it was like a play or something. And I don't know, she doesn't know much about it. All she knows is that I go out and about and I go to these places and that I'm writing a book and she's happy and proud of it. Well, not all my immediate family does not know. And well,
And is
that's
that
all right.
because you are, is that because you're hesitant to show them what you're working on, or is it
Um,
just because they're
well,
not
of course,
interested? Or-
naturally, because most of my immediate family, my relatives from my mother's side, they're Catholics, and then my father, they're uh, Christian, and the other one I think is Jehovah Witness and whatnot. So that's fine. But I don't really see much of my relatives in that way, especially the ones from my father's side. I rarely see my relatives from my mother's side. So it just, I guess in a way, it's my thing is, and I don't want to sound rude or anything, but it's just I do what I need to do. It's nobody's business but mine,
Yeah, that's
you know.
fair. But who do
Uh,
you live with though, or you live
I
alone?
I live with my sister, my brothers, my mother, and also my uncle, and he lives with us. He lives in the back of the house of the RV anyway. He has diabetes. I mentioned this, so type 2 diabetes running in the family. It's just horrible.
I'm sorry to
So
hear that.
yes. So every now and then I I send him food. I give him some food. We cook food and I give him some food or ask him, did you eat? Because sometimes he did not cook or either he's just lazy or anything. And I'm the same way too. But I say, yeah, I'll get you something. I'll make you something. So I'm just everything, everywhere, all at once. I'm taking the responsibility. I'm even my sister's father and mother and brother. Even with my two brothers, I'm their father in a way and mother because, well, mother's not always home. She's at work, and it's just the four of us in a way. And it gets a and some folks say surely it's you must have fun or it's a I I want to say it's yeah it's you have family here and there it can be lonely whatnot because we're all different characters, we're all different people, we all have different interests. I got my interests, my sister has her interests, so we do our own thing in a way, and that's okay. We can work with that.
Yeah.
Um, my mother's, yeah, she's supportive of my stuff, especially my work, my art pieces, stuff like that. But recently, we, I just had, it was quite a revelation. I have so much art pieces at home that I can't keep them all at home because, well, um, it's taking so much space at home at my house, and well, I'm afraid we're gonna have to throw some away. Um, so I don't know what I'm going to be doing most of them. I just have them all because we're just organizing and stuff. We just took out some floors and replaced them with new floors.
If anyone in the art world is watching this and wants to
Anyhow,
host Omar's cardboard Honey Bunches of Oats box,
so I thought,
yeah.
yes,
I mean
I,
sincerely. It's a shame to think of them all going away. Go on.
that's okay. I just thought, well, I gotta be. We had our time together, the art pieces and I. It was about 2019 going to 2024. That's not a long time, but it seems like a short time. But for me, it's quite a long time because I've been so intimate, so isolating, doing just that work. And well, I have to let it go and move on, you know. And I don't know where they're going to go, but
Can I ask,
I
hold
can't
on a
keep them
second.
all at home.
What is your process like when you're working on this stuff? Meaning, like, are you writing every day? Are you painting every day? Are you working on your iPad? Like, or is this
Every
a kind
now and
of,
then, when I have free time or downtime, or when I'm not working, or when I just because I'm very busy cooking or cleaning a little bit or doing all sorts of chores and whatnot, like going sometimes I go to get some groceries and or food. Or I go to get some or buy some food because yeah, we're lazy and that's okay. We don't want to cook it at the time, but I go instead of ordering food. It's the taxes are just horrendous. So I
Indeed.
walk there anyway.
Yeah.
I just have my downtime when I do. At nighttime, when it's quiet, when it's really, really quiet, you can even hear the voice of God Himself. It's I don't want to be quiet. Some folks do not believe in it, and that's okay. And I can accept that and live with that. No, and none should. And who am I to judge anyway? But it's like, you know how a child, they're just quiet there in the moment, and they just take in the silence and they observe. It's just that curiosity that sparks in me, that childlike curiosity.
You find that's the space you have to write from.
That and went and making art pieces.
Yeah. And yeah,
Oh,
to kind of echo something you said, I've noticed this having many fascinating late night phone conversations with you,
oh
Omar,
yeah,
that
those are
you're
fun.
kind of an inveterate night person, which
Yeah,
I feel like many artists
terrible.
and writers are, and I would be too if I didn't have to, slave away
But I
every
need to
morning.
sleep early, you know.
Yeah.
I have to sleep
Yeah.
early.
I do this on the other side of the day. I can't write anymore at night. I do it very early in the morning, but
Same.
Right.
I literally
Same.
cannot write after like 4 p.m.
yeah, it's,
unless I drink
it's
a lot of coffee. But anyway,
Yes. So
interesting.
I do that. It's just whenever I have downtime. And that's basically it in regards of writing or making art pieces. Um
Can I ask for
I'm
you?
not
You mentioned
Mhm.
something, and you said this
Go
is not.
ahead.
This is. I don't know if you have any interest in speaking about this, but you just talked
Oh,
about
all right then.
being late, being there when it's quiet late at night, and you can
Mhm.
hear the voice of God. And you were also talking about your sort of
The mundanity. I
religious
just embrace
affiliations.
yes.
Huh?
I embrace the mundanity that just it's the silence of the awful silence and the great silence. And you
yeah,
don't hear all these chatters from everybody. You just hear that one voice,
yeah,
that one voice, that one thought. And in a way, everybody has that spirit in them, and I have that spirit,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
I
That's
listen to
beautiful.
that, and it it's a quite a very interesting conversation to have because I talk to myself a lot of the time because it's a my life down here. I rarely talk to I rarely talk to my associates that way because I work at the parking lot. And so I do all my talking by myself, going up and down. Some people might consider or see me as some kind of louse or a dingbat or just a loon. I don't care. I just talk because I'm bored. It's not much to do. It's just mentally stimulating for me.
What does the word dingbat mean to you? When I saw
Oh,
that as the as a title to your book, Odyssey of
yes.
Dingbats, that I thought of the font dingbats, but you're kind of using this as a like almost like a slur or something. Is that what that
Um,
means to you?
at first, one person said took it as the wrong way as a how can I put this as a derogatory term or uh,
Yeah.
but it's not like that. I just embrace the lunacy and the whole madness of it all. Just we're all dingbats. We all can be just crazy and whatnot, and the situations
yeah,
are dingbats in a way, and the stories are dingbats. It's like the book The Odyssey or Ulysses, James Joyce Ulysses. Those two. And so I thought, why have an Odyssey of dingbats? All these crazy characters having a talking head and telling what they've gone through and who they spoke to and what they did. That kind of stuff. I just love the people in it. I
Mm,
embrace the just the mundanity and the lunacy of it all.
got it. I mean, I love that. What is
Thank
the
you.
emphasis? All right, so I do have to ask.
Go
Okay, so
ahead.
we have this in conversations every time I see you in person.
All
You
right,
often
dear.
seem like, all right, so I sent you, this is an example. I sent you my art book for the magician that has some
Yes.
very, very explicit photos in it, right?
Right.
You covered these up with stickers, which I thought was
Yes.
kind of fun. And you told me that was so that people that come to your house don't think you're a pervert or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, exactly. And at the same time, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to be playful around it? When you
Yeah.
read magazines and stuff, you just cut it out and just play around with it. So I thought,
But I have
that would
to
be fun to play around with it.
I'm gonna push back on you because you always talk
Okay.
about this, like even that story about watching my porn, and
Uh,
then
that was that one time.
I
Come
know,
on
I
now.
know, but you seem very like whatever, like
I
shy,
honestly,
and yet there's so much explicit sex in your book.
yes. Well, I'm just shy about it when it comes to children. When there's children around, I have to be mindful and respectful and those kinds of
Yeah.
things.
But
So
the
I,
but
I do get shy and whatnot. But
and you
when I'm talking to people like you, or anybody else, um, yes, I can be a, a foul-mouthed sailor.
I like that.
And
But so what is the fascination with the sex in your books? Where does that come
the
from?
sex, um, well, that's a good question. I'm like a voyeur, like a peeping Tom of some sort in a way. So I guess if you notice with the orange crayon, this crayon is a peeping Tom. Or if you've noticed the other one with Lester, he's a voyeur of some kind, just curious. I'm just curious of it all. I've only seen sexual education, things like that, but nothing more than that. And so I would like to have an understanding what's all that about. And I watch the movies to have an understanding. Not so much the porn, God, jeepers, but just movies. And that also sparked my curiosity. And
Yeah.
I don't care that much, because I don't care if I get laid or not. And that's none of my business and nobody's business. It's none
Yeah.
of my business what your sex life is like. And it's none of my business, as nobody's business what my sex life is. And to be frank, I don't have one and I'm okay with it. I'm absolutely fine. I'm not going to go crazy or kill somebody, or I'm going to kidnap somebody or stalk somebody or do all sorts of just wild things just because of just that feeling of having that ecstasy, just having that get your rocks off in a way. No, no. I I understand it and I just move on with it. It's just like any other thing. Like in the body, everybody takes a shit, and that's fine. Everybody take a pisser, that's fine too, and you move on. It's some kind of it's like I wouldn't say using the bathroom, but it's just what you do. It's normal in the bedroom,
Hmm.
that is, but out in public, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, fair enough. Are you about to say
Yeah.
something, Matt?
Oh yeah, I don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, you know, I don't mean to provide too much color commentary, but I do think that
Okay.
the sort of voyeurism thing, Omar, you mentioned, is a really interesting part of your work, and to an extent, what all writers engage in, and certainly all filmmakers. Um, that sort of connection between, it doesn't all have to literally be an orange crayon witnessing a kinky sex act, although you've written about that, but
Yeah.
just in general, that sense of interiority you can get on people and their lives, I think is what really sort of inspires you creatively is the read I have, because you also talk about it, the James Baldwin book, and you write, there's a section on Baldwin within the Odyssey of Dingbats. You recount finding those pages, and those pages of If Beale Street Could Talk, and in the book you don't even really get into that. It is a sex scene in that book, but it's, I think, in a more general way, you seem as a reader and as a writer really interested in getting that interiority on people. I think
Yes.
my read on you, having spent a good amount of time with you, is
Yeah.
that that's one of the things that really makes you tick. And there's the voyeurism, which we think of as perverted, but then there's also
Right.
voyeurism, which kind of gets you closer to the people's hearts and souls, which maybe has a more wholesome vibe to it. And I think your work has both,
Yeah.
both features.
Yeah. You gotta have some playful aspect or silly things when it comes to horror, because if it's just pure horror, it's just to a point it becomes boring. If it's just pure comedy, it also becomes boring. You gotta have a mix, a marriage of some kind with those two. Play with it around. It's just that you don't know what you might get if you have this horror with the comedy, or well, and vice versa.
Yeah, the other
Well,
thing I was gonna, I've obviously talked. Omar, we've done our own podcast, and
Yes,
I've probably talked about this elsewhere. But another, I sort of compliment or I'd pay you or
right.
an interesting thing, and I'm curious if Chris has thoughts on this. There's like, we kind of think of like literature as one thing, and like TV is another. But one thing, Omar, you
Right.
approach everything so with no irony. You like everything from Scooby Doo to Dennis Cooper to
Yes.
whatever the case
I
might
love
be.
Scooby Doo.
One
Cops,
thing.
Jerry Springer,
Jerry Springer, yeah, good example. I don't talk about voyeurism and
Jerry.
interiority on people's issues and life. And I just think one thing I really appreciate about you, Omar, is you can kind of find the common thread between American Horror Story and Dennis Cooper, and there's no like the breakdown between supposedly high and low culture. It totally breaks down with you because you can locate that common element of voyeurism or perversion or interiority in all of it. And I find that to be a source of inspiration with your work.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, man. Yeah, I like the American Horror Story and Twin Peaks, my jam. And I also love the Scooby Doo and Jerry Springer Cops, Sally Jesse Raphael. I love Tammy Hall. I just love all those shows. They're just engaging and whatnot. So fun. And just the people there is just wacky and stuff. And just who comes up with these things? That also it just sparks my curiosity. It
Yeah,
just
yeah, you're curious about
anything
people,
else.
right? As all writers
Right.
are, and
I like it.
everything from cops to Dennis Cooper to James Baldwin is a study in people.
Mad TV.
Yeah.
If anybody remembers Mad TV, that one too. God, I like that better than SNL. I'll
how
be
do you know
frank
I'm
with you.
not TV? You're 24 years old.
Fox. If you watch Fox,
Oh no, I don't
it
have
was
TV.
on it was on Fox. I remember
Yeah.
watching it on Fox. So it was
Okay.
fun.
Well,
Those kinds of things. Uh, Excuse me, I'm just scatterbrained here, but I'm trying to find the proper word or word to be articulate and to be accurate of what I'm describing and what I'm saying. Because I realize I tend to be a scatterbrain and just blabber on and on and on, but I have to be considerate what I'm going to say, because if you just wing it, that can just be dangerous when you're winging it too, because you honestly you do not know who you might offend. I reckon I kind of slightly offended that orange feller last night, John Lindsay.
or that orange. Oh, John.
I told him, you look like just like that Carrot Top and stuff like that. I think he's
Oh,
a pit. And so
Yeah,
that's
no,
probably one of
he
he's
said he's not
a
attractive. I
he's
said,
not attractive.
I mean, that's okay. To others, he may be attractive, but that's fine.
Because it's because you're into his wife, huh?
Um,
You know Ali Rowbottom? You took a
oh,
photo.
yes,
You
Alice.
just texted me too.
Yes,
oh yeah.
I don't think they'll
Omar
watch
did
it.
paint a very flattering picture of Ali Rowbottom. I did see this.
Yeah,
Anyway,
she's
not to.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
But I think fucking whatever. John's cool as fuck too. I think that's funny.
yeah,
That orange guy. Well,
that orange fella. God.
fair enough.
So
Okay.
I didn't mean to offend that louse. I just, well,
You just call him a louse.
Uh-oh.
oh, I'm
Jerry
sorry.
Springer. Yeah.
I, we should invite John Lindsay on to
Yeah.
battle with you.
But I'm sure he seems like a great person. I barely met him that one night, just like I met that Alex Gazemi. I'm sure he seems like a pip, but
I don't
all I
know.
can say,
Alex
yeah,
Kazan, I think a lot of people have strong feelings about too. He emailed
that
Absolutely.
me
makes both of
and
us.
then he ghosted, so I don't know what to say. But
That makes both
Or
of
did
us.
he email you? Anyway, we'll talk about this.
yeah,
All I
anyway,
can
we don't
say,
need to talk shit on too many people here.
yes,
I
just
love
like
John Lindsay and Ali Rowbottom and you.
thank you. So I'm sure they're great people. I'm sure they're wonderful people. But I told him I don't think I'm going to be seeing you ever again. To be frank with you, I know that for sure because, well, you're all the way from Malibu and I'm in Gardena, so it's going to be the odds is just,
Yeah, but
you
they show
know,
up to a lot of readings if you keep
yeah.
doing this
That's
so
what she
much.
said, and I told I'm sure, but that's fine, and I can accept that. I'm not really brooding and also crying about, oh, am I going to see that person? Oh, what? Well, oh, how, will this person be nice to me and stuff like that? No, I'm, I'm not really. I'll be
Yeah.
frank with you. I'm not really looking for the approval of others because I'm very confident within myself that I am what I am. I do as I do. I walk as I walk, and I speak what I think and feel, and that should be enough. And nobody else should influence or chime in or put their 2 cents there because, well, they're not the one doing this, that, or the other. They're not washing my dishes or making my dinner or bathing me or washing my clothes. So why should I really care about what some person have to say about me? It doesn't appeal to me, and it certainly does not revolves around my world because I got my own stuff going on, and I'm okay with that.
Well, I feel that. But all right, so I got to make a practical thing here. We need sort of need to wrap this up, at least for me.
For
Okay.
sure.
So what are our final thoughts? I'm going to throw it back to Matthew
All
here
right then.
because
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Yeah, obviously this conversation was kind of structured strangely, but at the very least, I'll send,
I
if
liked
you
it
want to cut
very
out the part where
much.
I was kind of interviewing at the front, that's fine. Because honestly, the stuff between you and Omar, that was the pure gold.
I'll
That
leave it
being
all in
said,
unless you don't want me to include something.
no, not at all. Yeah, yeah. I just, I'm cognizant of I don't want it to be, I don't want it to appear too sloppy. And I mostly just want, your followers to hear more from Omar because many of them are probably like loosely familiar with him if they go to the events. But either way, it was probably a
Yeah.
good intro to ease into it, talking about. I just don't want it to be redundant for your
Oh
particular
man,
followers.
going to these
But
places.
in terms of final thoughts, similar to what Omar said, I can go on at length about things too, so I'll try and keep this brief. It's Chris. It seemed like you were going to ask Omar something about God and hearing the voice of God and his religious background. I'm bracketing that, tying it in to something I was going to say about creation that I
Okay.
will just because I mean I would say this to you in person if it came up. Just one of the things that really resonated with me was I don't even remember which story it's in, but I think probably the last Luca Fisher section about the magician, how occultism sort of looms over the book and certainly looms over the magician. It looms over my own work. I found it really interesting when you kind of laid out the dichotomy between Christianity on the one hand and occultism on the other. And the very memorable line to me is like how occultism is kind of the province of unemployed musicians, and then Christianity is like if you have a family. And what really resonated with me about that, and maybe this is sort of relevant to Omar, what you would say about your own views on God and religion and everything.
Right.
I really appreciate because this is my stance on it too. Like a lot of people who are into the occult are like, fuck Christianity or whatever, hail Satan.
All right.
But I think the way you describe it as being kind of similar things, like a sense of meaning in the universe and comfort and maybe even getting
Right.
what you want. I mean, that comes into both
Oh
magic as well as prayer.
Right.
Just that kind of holistic understanding of these as two sides of the same coin. It's just like, what position in life are you? Are you kind of this atomized individual trying to do what thou wilt, or are you a family person, praying for your husband or wife to not die of cancer? Like, I just, because that's a major theme
or
of
like
this podcast,
manifesting.
Strange Flows and everything, and my own work. Uh, I read it at like 4 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, and it just, yeah, the relating to what you were saying there really spoke to me in that moment, and is very much my own understanding of these kind
Right.
of spiritual matters and
Ooh.
this search for God and meaning. Um, I really like the way it shines through your work. And Omar, I'm making a very broad point here, but
Yeah.
Omar, in terms of the religiosity in your own work, you're not explicitly religious,
Oh,
but I think you have a
religion,
similar
huh?
holistic sense of God or whatever that means to you.
Yes. Well, just like any other religion or things like that, there's always that one person that kind of like there's a darkness and a light, and we're all like in some kind of tunnel. Because I reckon David Lynch described that as well when it came to religions, things like that, how it's all going into one, and it's just like a tunnel and a train going this way, and it's so true, and it's true to me, and hopefully it's true to others. That it's just that one beacon of light like that, where it shows the darkness, brightens the darkness. And if you didn't have the light, you certainly didn't have the darkness. That's what Bob Ross said in that. I have to quote him on that because that really sparked my in there where if you didn't have the darkness, you certainly didn't have the light. And if you didn't have the light, well, you certainly wouldn't have dark things. So it's a yin and yang kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm I'm not, how can I describe religious in that way? Like I go to church and whatnot and stuff like that. Because why? Because I wrote, why should I just go to a building when he's everywhere? Or it or him, he's, for me, it's he's everywhere all at once at this very moment there too. And
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And who am I to say you should believe in him and this, that, and the other? No, that's okay. You don't have to believe in him. If you don't want to, that's fine. And you can have that free will if you don't want to, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think abstractly, Omar, you and I maybe have kind of a similar opinion of
Right.
God. And I think, I've only sort of broached this publicly in very recent
Yes.
interviews. I did a podcast with Adam Lehrer recently when we
Right.
talked
Yeah.
about my relationship to
Yeah.
God. But
Oh yeah, Adam.
uh, most of the writing I've done has come from a very atheist point of view, and that's kind of been my belief system most of my adult life up until the past 2 years. I think we're running out of time to really delve into this too much here, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, the analogies in those essays that you were referring to, Matt, is kind of like, I think like The Magician was probably the first book of mine to start to play with those topics, but I think they were still in a kind of antagonistic way. Though I did want to broach the subject of Christianity in a way that most of my peers do not, or most of our peers do not. At least growing up in California, predominantly around very left-wing people.
Oh yeah.
The It's almost assumed when I meet people that they don't believe, like
Yeah.
everyone just kind of, oh, like you don't believe in God and it's bullshit. And yet my mother raised me a Christian. She is still a Christian. And I don't know that I identify quite
Right.
that like religiosity or that kind of religious
Right.
affiliation, but I did not want to sort of denigrate this in the work and just write it off as something stupid. I think there's, well, even if you erase the sort of like God point of view, I think there's a really strong case for community and sort of sense of purpose for people who have those religious affiliations. And I think it's interesting right now, our culture seems to be having like a pendulum shift
Mhm.
drastically.
Most
A lot of
definitely.
younger people, I think, are starting to seek that out again in a way that
Yeah.
people when I was young, seemed to be swinging the other direction. So I don't know if it's just getting older or whatever, but I find that, I do have a daily prayer practice, and I think in creation, I start to sort of hint at what that means to me, but it's still pretty personal.
Yeah.
Right.
And whatever. I mean, and what you're talking about, Omar, I think is right on. I mean, if you look at
Yeah.
any of these sort of powerhouse writers from the past several hundred years, I think people who still have kind of like a faith-based relationship to their life still have the ability to write about some of the things that we do, which is
Right.
extremely explicit things around our interior lives in regards to sex and violence and whatever else is labeled transgressive, but it's kind of a part of the same package, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page about that. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, and again, we'll wrap it up, but I think historically there's this tension between transgression and Christianity and occultism and God and all of it. And I do just think not just us, but everyone in this bold, this brave new world will come to approach it all more holistically. And I think that books such as yours, Chris, and yours, Omar, can be part of that, which is interesting to me.
Yes.
Well, hey, it's really good talking to you all. If you have any final thoughts, Omar or Matt, throw it down. Otherwise,
Final thoughts. Well, I have to say this was great. The I I'll be frank with you. I really didn't expect this all to happen. It just all happened so fast, so quickly. I'm just caught in this moment. To be frank with you, I knew I was gonna publish, and I wanted to do originally. Ideally, I wanted to do it traditionally, and I have no idea about it. I was willing to learn, so I approached these people at Apocalypse Party and Filthy Loot, and they was kind. I guess Filthy Apocalypse Party. They didn't respond back then, and Filthy Loot was caught up with whatever that is going on. And in a way, I have to say, I'm glad they rejected it. I'm glad that they didn't take it, because if they did take it, I would have not met Matt, and I wouldn't have met
Thank you.
Evan, and we wouldn't have formed this interesting friendship in a way, and a
Yeah.
collaboration. And so to that, I'm glad. I'm glad I got rejected, and I'm glad that it all just happened so perfectly in a way. It's hard to describe it. I'm at loss at words. I'm at loss at words. That's what
Yeah. Well, that's fair, Omar. Well, I think that's really cool. Yeah. I mean, look, I've gone through my
right.
own rejection phases that
And
ended up putting me in the where I think was the right place to be. For example, like amphetamine sulfate and
yeah,
apocalypse. I didn't know about them until I had to kind of do some digging
right.
because the traditional presses wouldn't take my shit, which it's fine, but I got an audience that way. And I kind of think that you will find this in the coming year. I think with literature, you have to be very patient. I
Yeah.
think that's
Oh yeah, that's what I learned too. You
nice. Yeah.
got to be really, really patient, and
Yeah.
it's hard work because you want it to happen so fast, so quickly, and just right away. Well, that urgency, I have that urgency in me. I get it because I get so existential and whatnot, but I just don't want to ramble on and on. I have this urgency, and I have to be patient with that. I gotta be really patient and just let it be, let it breathe, and just let it form on its own. And final, just let the work speak for itself
Yeah.
at the end. You can say whatever you want, but the work at the end has to speak for itself.
Agreed. Well,
Mhm. That's awesome.
everyone, I don't know how quickly I'll have this out on my end. Matt, you might put it up sooner, but I don't know. It will either be up
Yep.
at the end of this month or
Yes.
very beginning of January, and which should coincide with
Yeah, I'll send you the
some.
links
Okay.
as we have
Well,
them. It might be good to wait, in fact. And
Uh,
I mean, maybe
okay.
I'll post it sooner. Maybe it'd be good to do it No, maybe I'll just post on mine, and then you have a different audience, so we could do it that way.
Yeah, I
But
don't think that we really need to like, well, I mean, if you want to coordinate, fine, but maybe, yeah, just for the purposes of promoting the fucking book, like we should wait till it's available or like at least available for pre-order. So
yeah,
you're planning to release this what in early January or late
probably
January or
late January, but yes,
okay.
January by hook or
Yeah,
by
because
crook.
I still
Yeah,
gotta get you a fucking blurb, I promise, by the end of the month. Uh Question, can you,
yes.
because I think this is going to end up saving to your computer, Matt. Are
yeah,
you able to like Dropbox me or we transfer me the
definitely.
files?
I'll transfer you would
Okay,
be how I'll do it. Yeah, that should
perfect,
be fine. I have your email, so I'll let you know if something comes up. But yeah, easily enough, I can just send it to you.
perfect. Well, hey, you two, this has been really
Yeah,
fun
this
and
was really a lot of fun. Thanks so much for your time, and yeah, excited to post
absolutely.
it.
All right, well,
This
take it
was
easy.
great.
Great rest of your weekend,
Thank
man.
you so much for coming, and thank you for the conversation. This reminds me of that one, the actors on actors kind of video, but this is in
Yeah, yeah,
regards to just the people, the writers on writers or artists on artists, and this was fun just to get to know
absolutely.
your friend, your neighbor, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. All right, take it easy, you two.